Welcome to another episode of Ripple Moments. I'm Muriel Baptiste, one of your hosts, and I'm the Executive Director of the Utopia Connect Foundation. We're happy to have you join us again for another Ripple Moments where we find an inspiration for conversations that help us to connect. These conversations are free to the public, but if you can, we encourage you to support our work by donating. You can visit ripplemoments.org to make a donation to support or sponsor these conversations. And with me today are our other hosts, Sterling and Clarabelle. Welcome.
Hi, yes, welcome. This is Sterling Goodrich, one of your other hosts. Really excited about our guest today. Claudia, can you tell us a little bit about the kind of people we bring on to Ripple Moments?
Thank you, Sterling. So who are our guests? Our guests are people we think you should learn from. Those who struggled, those who made notable contributions to our communities, especially during this pandemic, or simply those who lead in various industries. During these conversations, we want to honor our artists, students, and educators, because we each have something to bring that can make our humanity better. And we are creating a platform to let that inspiration flourish in a time when we need it most. Through these conversations, our goal is to elicit hope, healing, awareness, and a greater sense of purpose as we listen to real people in our communities making a difference. Back to you, Muriel.
Thank you, Clarabelle. And today is one of those days that we are so honored to have our guest with us. So join me as we welcome Dr. Folasade Adekunle, who believes in the transformative power of a quality education. Her mission is to support and develop strong teachers who in turn develop strong students. She currently serves as the principal of Sayre Language Academy, where she works with various stakeholders to provide a high-quality educational experience for students. Prior to her principalship, she served as resident principal at Walt Disney Magnet School, where she supported 2nd through 8th grade teachers in strengthening their instructional capacity through robust data analysis, protocols, and improved professional learning systems. From 2013 to 2015, she worked as an instructional coach for the AUSL network. She provided classroom management and instructional support for 1st and 2nd year teachers. Ms. Adekunle holds a bachelor's degree from Northwestern University in political science and history, a master's degree in teaching from the University of Illinois, Chicago, and a doctorate in education from the University of Illinois at Chicago. Dr. Adekunle, as we know her in our community, Ms. Ade, welcome to Ripple Moment.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for having me. What a pleasure to be here.
Welcome.
We are honored.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So before we actually get into this interview, if you've had an opportunity to watch our previous episodes, you know what we're going to ask you to do. We are going to ask you if you want to partake in a COVID challenge.
Absolutely.
Awesome. We know your students can't wait to watch this and answering questions for you.
Right.
And now it's your turn. So here we go. Are you ready?
As ready as I will be.
So there will be 12 questions, one for
Okay.
each month of the pandemic that we have endured. And so hopefully it's going to be lighthearted for you. And here we go. You've got to answer yes or no, and all within 1 minute.
Okay.
All right. So number 1, did you bake bread?
Yes. With my mom on Zoom.
You did? On Zoom? Did you work from home?
Yes.
Did you hoard toilet paper?
No.
Ooh.
Couldn't find any to hoard.
Ask all the other thousands that did hoard. Did you welcome more technology?
Welcome it?
Yeah.
I think it was inevitable.
Okay. Did you
No. I'm following the rules. No.
Did you resent more technology?
Yes.
Was your eating out of whack?
No.
Impressive. Did you support your favorite restaurant?
Yes.
Did your mask make you self-conscious of your breath?
Yes.
Did you get more or less sleep than you did in 2019?
Less.
Are you forever changed?
Absolutely. 1000%.
Are schools forever changed?
Absolutely. But not all for the bad.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much.
That was fun.
Started little bit.
I'm glad I got to be part of the baking bread people.
I haven't.
I did hoard yeast, though. That's a no-no.
You may have been the first person actually to say yes to baking bread.
Really?
I think she will.
Yeah.
What kind of bread did you bake, by the way?
I think it was just like a regular white bread. My mom regularly bakes bread. I was like, I'm gonna do it with you because I want to learn. And it was pretty. Hers was a lot prettier though.
There's really something about fresh baked bread, right? That smell.
A childhood smell. Yeah.
Nothing beats that.
Yeah.
No.
Well, thank you again for, joining us in our silliness. We just wanted to raise the vibration before we even got started.
Absolutely.
We are so excited to hear from you because first of all, I just learned how to pronounce your name, Sayre Adekunle.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. So now that I've said it correctly, I am going to ask you to tell us about yourself. We chatted a little bit in the green room, and we got to know little bits and pieces about you, but I want our viewers to hear that too. Tell us all about yourself. Who are you?
Who am I? I'm going to try to be as succinct as possible, right? Because sometimes I tend to go all the way back to my origin story. So I'm originally a native from Nigeria. Despite my accent, I was actually born in Nigeria. We immigrated here when I was 8 with my family. So I have an older sister and a younger brother, and then my mom and my dad. Both my parents were educators first, professionals second. And so my father had a medical rotation in radiology. And so people find it funny that we moved to Southern Illinois in a small town called Mount Carmel, population 1,800, 100% white. I do think all experiences that I've had have led to who I am today and the perspectives that I'm able to bring to my and just to how I live. So I believe we moved to Atlanta because my mom was like, okay, small town's enough. They got to get some culture in. And of course, Black Mecca is where we headed. So I finished out high school there. I started and finished out high school there and then moved to Evanston to attend my undergrad at Northwestern. And then fell in love with the city of Chicago, just the vibrancy, the diversity, all the many things to do. You might be able to tell I'm a little bit of an extrovert. So I like to get out there, meet people, experience new things, and the food. Yes, Lord, the food. And so, after college, found myself in the teaching world because it was a meal ticket to not have to move back home with my mom.
Between us.
So I was in the classroom for about 8 years, loved every minute of it, did all the things, teacher leadership, national board certification, and just kept finding myself looking for more opportunities to spread my passion for education, for public service. And, one thing led to another. I'm a bandwagoner. Like, people are just like, wow, you must be really passionate about education. I was like, I am, but I also just follow people. And a good friend was signing up for the UIC doctoral program. And I think, Shari, you shared a story of another Ghanaian guest that you had. And everybody knows that West African parents love degrees. And so even though I was a teacher and I was a good teacher, they were like, hey, but when are you going to get your doctorates, your engineering, your law degree? I was like, I'm not interested in any of those things. But it was almost like this inevitability that was happening. So after my master's program, I was like, all right, let me just do this thing and get it out of the way. And in Nigeria, we say, like joke. I finished the residency, and they're like, so now it's time for you to go for a school. And I was like, oh, I thought this was just pretend. And I think Sayre was the first and only school I actually interviewed for. But it was like I later described sort of like when I fell in love with Sayre and just the community of Galewood. I told my mentor principal, the principal of Disney at the time, I said, you know, I told them that Sayre felt like how Color Purple felt like to Oprah. She was like, what? And I was like, I saw this interview with Oprah and she said, I've never wanted anything more than I wanted a part in Color Purple. And I told myself that if I get it, I will never want anything that badly again. And I was like, I get that feeling, right? Of that, like, if it's not this school and like what I'm going to pour into it, then everything else will just be not Sayre, right? And apparently they fell in love with me too, or they just thought I was mad. Because here I am 5 years later. Yeah. So that's my story.
Beautiful.
Awesome. The community is lucky to have you. I mean, it's rare to find somebody transplanted from a whole different country, comes to a small town, then you go to the South, and
yes.
experiences, the remarkable experiences that make you you, and Sayre Language Academy. So it's, you know, the fact that you are bringing that additional culture to a language is critical. So that's awesome. Thank
you. Absolutely. And I think Sayre is one of those communities that, you know, as diverse as Chicago Public Schools is going to get, we represent that, right? Even in our student body and our families, we do have people from different cultures, different backgrounds. Even when you say Latinx, right? Like we still have a diversity of countries that our students represent. And so I think, you know, how I was raised and the opportunities in the countries I've gotten to live in, I'm able to sort of have that connection, right, with parents and with students and understand like, this is how we have fun, or this is how we love to be recognized. And I think that's important to a school community.
Great. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I saw a video in 2016. You made a statement regarding the reframing of school discipline. You stated that challenges with student behavior are a school culture issue, not a problem with students themselves. Has the pandemic created new challenges in disciplining students? Like example, mask, lack of socialization. What are you finding?
Wow. You know, you said has the pandemic changed schooling? One of the ways that I've seen that the pandemic has changed our children is just how they communicate, or the lack of communication with the caring adults. And so if you had asked me, you know, between pre-pandemic and now, what are some of the discipline issues? Today, I would tell you we don't really have discipline issues. But of course, I'm being sort of like broad about that, right? It's mostly about how students choose to make friends, or how they choose to sort of try to set themselves apart from their peers. And so what we're currently struggling with is the cameras. So you and I get on Zoom meetings and we just sort of assume we'll see a sea of people, of square boxes that I'm going to talk to, and it's going to try to mimic what our normal interactions are. Specifically our middle school students, like starting probably like 4th, 5th grade up, you just see squares. You see squares with icons. And so they're there, but they're not there, right? And they understand that sort of the ball is in their court. So, you know, teacher, you know, trying to convince them to turn their cameras on, trying to get them to be more interactive in the lessons, when we all as adults sort of understand that there's this inherent passiveness that happens with Zoom calls, right? Someone is talking and I just have to like look like I'm awake and listening. I don't have to answer, I don't have to talk. And then the 2-3 students who do sort of carry the class conversations, you find that they continue to carry the class conversation. So I think some of my teachers are in the dark about what kids know, what they are concerned about. You know, you just have to tease and tease and tease. And then, you know, you've got the occasional, you know, misuse of technology, or like, let's check out this website. But even as technology natives, they don't understand that we can see everything. And so they try to deny it. And I'm just like, no, this is you. Like, you're on So it's a lot. Discipline is open and closed case. They're just sort of like, okay, yeah, that's right. But I think it's more in the participation, and so it's more passive type of behavioral issues.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You just discussed some of the challenges that the students are having in terms of technology and all of that. I have a question. How besides what you just described of having to deal with those technology challenges, how has your role as a principal changed during the pandemic?
Do we have time? So one of my favorite taglines is, they don't teach this in principal school. Right? Like, you go, you get leadership training, you read all the books, you go to the conferences. I think the biggest change for me was learning to pivot, right? In any kind of profession, I think you sort of expect this professional courtesy that, like, you're going to give me 2 weeks notice if something major is going to occur, or I'm going to have time to think about it, to flesh it out, to massage it. And what the pandemic has showed is, like, no one owes you anything, right? I could tell you that you have to welcome 300 students back and you have 2 weeks to do it. You just have to do it. And so I think very quickly you learn to roll up your sleeves, ignore that chip on your shoulder and connect with the people that you need to. So I would say the biggest thing that has changed is my level of flexibility and being able to say, like, I'm going to walk into my building and I just sort of have to be on my toes about what's going to come at me today. And sometimes I like to hide in the world of instruction and academics, and this has really stretched my operational thinking and my systemic thinking in relation to, like, moving pieces, schedules, where do you put students, where do you take them, what classroom, that sort of thing. But it's a good stretch. It's a good stretch. I can work on Mars at this point. Fortune 500, bring it.
Your experience is a lot like everybody else's experience with COVID in general. It's like you're stretching, you're shrinking sometimes.
Yes.
You don't know where you're going. You just know that today you're present, and so let's keep it moving and try to do.
Rowland said it. Be like water, right? Bruce Lee. Be like water. I got really used to being like, well, that sucked, or that didn't go very well, and be like, okay, we'll try again tomorrow.
Bruce is definitely have an overlapping theme amongst some of our programs here. Definitely be like water, kind of like go with the flow and come back with it and move. However, just got to be adaptable.
Absolutely.
One of the things that really came out at the beginning of the pandemic is, like, all these people were like, "Oh, teachers have a hard job, huh?"
Yeah.
And then there was a sudden respect for teachers, and I'm wondering if you feel like that's still there now that people are starting to come back, in person.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if this differentiates me from my colleagues, but I think how I sort of build myself, or I see myself, as a leader, is teacher first, right? I often will think about ideas or initiatives, and I will try to put my teacher hat on and say, but what is this going to actually feel like, even though on paper it sounds like a great idea? And part of the way that we approached reopening schools, I reminded the teachers that we're going to lead by grace and flexibility. And that's afforded to students, that's afforded to families, that's afforded to yourselves, right? Give yourself grace and flexibility, because we're all trying to move around and pretend there is no national or international pandemic. But the truth is, there is, right? No mistaking that. And so sometimes the stressors, the anxieties of returning or having to relearn what teaching and learning looks like, because you can't see the kids, you can't touch the kids, you can't, move like you normally do. It made some of my most, capable teachers, it was maddening, right? Because suddenly I think the phrase that I heard the most was, I feel like a new teacher. I feel like a new teacher. right? And I was like, how is that a bad thing, right? Like you are being afforded fresh eyes at something that you've probably done rotely, and you are probably coming up with new ways to look at things or new ways to provide students with the same quality education. You're working with your colleagues more often. You're sharing things, you're sharing ideas, resources at rates that I've never seen before. And so I think for me, obviously not being in the classroom, I sort of have this bird's eye view of how people are changing in big and small ways. And I can say, like, just as we say the kids are all right, the teachers are all right. Like it might come working out, you're like, I don't want to lift this 50-pound dumbbell, right? I don't want to do 25 push-ups or jumping jacks. But then 2 weeks down the road, you're like, I feel really strong. I'm starting to look good. That cut, right? And so that's how teachers start to feel. They start to be like, let me tell you what I just did with simultaneous instruction. I had 4 groups here. We had breakout sessions. A kindergartner was managing the time, and then everybody had roles. And I was like, yep, you did that. Right? So absolutely, teachers are still one of the hardworking, if not the most hardworking people that are out there. And I absolutely, there's no taking that away from them. And despite, sort of the cantankerous relationship between the district and the union, I think it was important to keep that idea top of mind. These are my people, right? And at the end of the day, no matter how frustrating this is, the back and forth, you gotta come back to Sayre and we gotta work together, right? So at the end of the day, you can hold that grudge, you can be right, or you can improve, right? So I think everyone will come out of this changed. Most people will come out improved, but I think this has afforded many people, including myself, a level of clarity about working in your purpose than ever before. So those who decide this is not for me, this was the clarifying moment for them, right? They realize, I don't know that I care enough about children. I don't know that I care enough about education for it to be worth this much, right? We put a price tag on the quality of education, particularly public education and the education of Black and Brown students. And so everybody is asked to bring out their wallets and pay up. And so you'll start to see people who are like, oh, fine, I'll do it. Or people are like, gladly. Or people will be like, you know what? I pass. And that's okay, right? We want you where you need to be.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of adversity can force some creativity as well, from what I'm hearing from you too. And that seems like it's a real positive that might have come out of all of this as well.
Absolutely. My proudest outcome that has come from this is that we still stay true to our vision for what a neighborhood school can provide students. In a district as large as Chicago Public Schools, it's very easy to start to draw lines of haves and have-nots, right? We have a lot of conversation about equity and sort of allocation of resources. I've always been of this idea that like a neighborhood school can be just as good or even better than a private school, than a school. Charter schools and private schools need to be there to serve as that level of competition, to serve as that level of, I do have to work for my students. I do have to retain them. I can't just be like, you live across the street, so you have to come to my school. But if that charter and Catholic school are saying, but we have a climbing wall, but you get a weekly cooking class, neighbor school has to step up and say, oh, wait, we offer Spanish. Come get some, right? So we just recently were awarded an International Baccalaureate Middle Years program for Sayre. And that was a really huge moment for the school community because the application process required that we talk to students, teachers, parents, the alderman, the librarian to say, hey, this is something that our middle school students are ready, because we saw that, our high performing students, all the way to just the student who didn't really, put forth that effort, they were making decisions when they got to middle school about whether they were staying or they were going for various reasons, or at least their parents were. And we said, we need to start providing instruction and programming that says, stay at Sayre because you started something strong that will give you all kinds of options after you leave us. And so when the pandemic hit, we were like, so is IB on pause? And I was like, we still have kids? Well, let's go. And so the middle schoolers were engaged in almost like a weekly genius hour, we call it. And so we Google-fied the way we instruct. We said, we're not going to teach you anything. You're going to find your passion and you're going to teach us. And the kids at first were like, well, when is it due? What's the assignment? What's the grade? How do you do this? Da, da, da. And we were like, we don't know because you haven't taught it to us yet. So again, the teachers are looking at me like, here she goes again with her. It's a pandemic. Let's just teach them reading, writing, and arithmetic and get out of here. And I was just like, no, just watch what's going to happen. Because what you have to realize is like when they log off their math class or their, at 2:30 when they're not a Sayre student anymore, the kids are still on the computers and they're doing stuff that's more profound, that it's more engaging, that they because they get to create it and they get to lead it. And I said, I bring that energy to the school. Let them teach us stuff. And when I tell you, they came up with stuff where you're like leaning into the computer because you're like, you said what now? We had children who did like a rapid video of themselves going grocery shopping, buying potatoes, telling you how to cut them to make Hasselback potatoes. They showed you the history of Hasselback potatoes. There was a student that taught us the origins of the GIF or like a meme. And they're like, the first meme was Astro Boy. And I was like, what? Like true aha or like, wow. There was a who English is her second language, and she mapped out the slope intercept of the Leaning Tower of Pisa and showed at what point that if they had gone too far, they would have actually like mind-blowing stuff. And the whole thing was we just needed to bring or give them the opportunity to do that, right? And it was an opportunity to show teachers that we don't need bricks and mortar to still innovate. And it's still going. They've done, I want to say 4 or 5 rotations of this. They take about 5 weeks to work on those passion projects. They can do it individually or in groups. But I'm excited to, put all this stuff together and start to share it with the community through our website. But they never cease to amaze me. And I think the teachers have learned something about themselves as teachers and like how much they can let go and see what the students can produce. So that's just an example of some of the innovations that we're still able to do during the pandemic.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it reminds me of what we do after school,
Yeah.
We really push engagement.
Yes.
But we're bringing that into the school right now, which has been beautiful.
Mhm.
We need to, because we don't always get the kids to stay after school, right? And especially online, it's a long day on screens.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I just heard on NPR that you become a poorer driver after being on Zoom all day because it takes. And I was like, well, that's not good.
No, it's not. We need better drivers out there.
Right.
For sure.
Could you do us a favor? Could you describe in general terms what the journey has been for Sayre Language Academy teachers from the beginning of the pandemic until now? Different schools, I think, have experienced different setbacks, or different schools have been really excited about, employing more technology. But we've heard there's a lot of frustration, and virtual teaching versus in person. Tell us, what has that been like at Sayre Language Academy for your teachers?
Absolutely. So I joked to myself that if the pandemic had happened 2 years ago, I'd have resigned. Because my group of people were just a different group of people. They're still physiologically the same, but mindset-wise, it would have just been very difficult. So the teachers at Sayre Language Academy are consummate professionals, right? Just those type A people that just want to do a great job at all times, which oftentimes means that they want control, they want order, and they want certainty. And of course, as you know, the pandemic is the actual definition of and the opposite of certainty. And so knowing that, right? So when we closed in March of 2019, we sort of said, throw everything we have at it, whatever sticks, whatever platforms that we need. So when we closed in March, when we closed, in-person instruction in March, we made it through that school year and everybody sort of did the big whoo. right? And then they said, all right, I'm going to go decompress through July, and I'll see you in September. And knowing my group of people, I was like, that's not going to be possible, and for this to turn out well. And so what I think we did differently was we said, so the district is going to take some time to sort of massage what this, new world order of remote learning looks like. But while they're waiting, why don't we start creating some contingency plans so people can know it's either going to be A or B, right? Sometimes I have to Morpheus them and be like, red pill, blue pill, pick one. And I think that's what I think allowed us to be as successful as we were this year, and to get to some semblance of regular school, but virtually much faster, because I started engaging my staff in late July, August. And I said, even though we don't know which one is going to be, are we going to reopen in person? Or are we going to go fully remote? Or are we going to go hybrid? Let's create a plan for either scenario, right? Remote or some semblance of hybrid. And I think giving structures to what it could possibly look like, even without consulting anyone, gave teachers a little bit of release of like all that pent up anxiety. And so we also started just corralling all the community partners and professional development providers that we knew to start to give teachers training on some of these platforms. So, now people use Jamboard, Google Classroom, Google Meets. And so giving them that opportunity and say, this is all voluntary, but I'm going to start having these bi-weekly all staff meetings. And I'm going to say, this is what we purchased for primary. This is what we purchased for intermediate. This is what we purchased for middle school. And this is the person that's going to train you on that, whether it was the company. So we brought out Nearpod, we brought out, what's the other one that we use? Seesaw. We got some consultants to come and help teachers start planning using those mediums. People who need certainty and need structure, that was the godsend for them, because then they could start actually eking away at what seemed like a glacial, a monumental thing to overcome. So by the time September hit, they could start worrying about their routines and procedures. They weren't learning as they go, which, for teachers is an uncomfortable space to be in, to sort of have kids tell you, no, you press this button, not that button. We didn't get everybody, but we got enough people who were like, all right, I don't want to scream and run and hide. And so, once they knew they had that initial training, and we also trained the parents. I would show up on Facebook Live and I'd be like, if anybody has any questions and how to log on, I'm right here. And we did. We had people like, tell me my password again. Tell me like, where are the kindergartners going? And so same things with the teachers, like having that continuous professional development. We held a couple of Google Meets and Google Classroom trainings for parents, and then lots and lots of town halls. I've never talked so much in 2019, 2020 that I was like, when this is all over, I'm taking an oath of silence. Everybody was like, but just that was the elixir, just communicating what I knew. And if I didn't know it, fielding questions, to where people felt like whatever the next change was, whether it was fully remote all the way to like hybrid for the first wave, people knew what was about to happen. And so my teachers have gone from being technology, I don't want to call them troglodytes, but like sometimes some people cry when they see technology. Like some of those teachers are now like, well, I integrated the new ZLA article to my Google Classroom, and I run them their flowers. I'm like, yes, right? And then you have some teachers that are just like, I coded the entire class to grade itself, and you're just like, I can't talk to you right now. But then they lean on each other. Like the teachers know who's the savvy person. Like, hey, I heard you can make your grade book talk to your Google Classroom, and then they sit there and they want to learn. And that has been a point of pride about my staff, is that you find people more often than not leaning into the challenge of adopting new technology and things like that. I have a kindergarten teacher that she's like, are you proud of me? I say upload, not download. They're adorable. I love them all. Yeah, but they've been more just overwhelmingly accepting of like, it's a pandemic. Let's work through it.
I didn't realize that the parents also got some technology training. So the teachers did, and then the parents did to better support their
Yes.
be at home.
That was a big investment that I knew was going to be necessary, right? Because we can have all our shops set up on this end, but if you have that parent, especially for our primary students, you know, by like third grade and up, our students know their email addresses. They're familiar with Google Classrooms because just I call it in the regular times, in the olden days, the teachers would assign work on Google Classroom. But then, you know, our kindergartners, they were like, seesaw? Nap time? And so we knew the parents were going to be key to that. So we had to be like, this is an iPad. Any way you hold it, it will orient itself, right? And some of our students are being raised by grandparents, you know, sometimes great grandparents, and you just have to, or by, you know, like language sometimes is an issue or barrier. So just trying to really help them, you know, even just be like on button, call Sayre. And, you know, I sometimes I talk to the same set of parents so much that like I pick up the phone and I was like, oh, hey, Mr. Martinez, how are you? Right? Start troubleshooting. And we also adopted this like all hands on deck, right? Like, yes, I have a computer tech guy, but he's not the only one that can solve issues. Right? So my clerk, my AP, myself, anybody that was available to take a call that was tech related, you know, we would just take it so that there wasn't this frustration. Because my thing was, if you let people get to a frustration point, I could just drop off, right? We hear of the schools where 30%, 40% of their student body just poof, disappeared into thin air. And we were lucky enough to maintain one of the highest, if not the highest level of attendance during fully remote in our network, just because we were like, we're going to keep checking on people. The parents are also, you know, our responsibility as much as the students, and get to people's need as fast as possible. Switch out those Chromebooks, you know, oh, that's not working. Let me walk. You could find me on the stoops of Sayre, like teaching a parent, like, and then you do this, and then you slide it over. And then they're like, can you do it again? Sure. Right? No skin off my back if it gets you to keep the kids online.
Yeah.
Unbelievable, all of the different hats that you've had to wear during the pandemic. I mean,
Be a haberdasher.
Great opportunity for you as well. I mean, taking you out of the comfort levels and having to go from being, you know, a traditional principal to IT, you know, to running town hall meetings, to dealing with all sorts of challenges. Teachers, I'm sure, breaking down and saying, I can't do this. I mean, I can't even imagine all of the scenarios that you had to deal with. Counselor, right? Therapist. I mean,
yes, all of the above. And I had to remember to do that. I'm a naturally social person by nature, but I think sometimes when I'm in go mode, it's at odds with my ability to check in with people, right? Because I'm like, things are on fire. Let's run towards the fire. And then I have to be like, fellow firefighter, how are you feeling? How are the children? Right? Did you eat today? And I think I had co-conspirators that helped me with that, right? My IB coordinator, my counselor, they were good people about, you know, being like, they're not ready yet. The teachers are crying. And I'll be like, oh, right, teachers are crying. Okay, let's feed them. They'll tell you, that's my solve for everything. Let's order tacos. We ordered a lot of tacos this year.
Nothing wrong with tacos.
They're great.
Yeah. Fantastic.
So we have a message from a viewer, but before I get to that, definitely this pandemic has stretched all of us. But as a result of the pandemic, I wonder, as we revert to in-person, what are some of the changes in the school system that could lead to richer educational experiences for students? What do you want to keep?
That's a good question. You know, as the district sort of rolls out and adjusts its reopening plan, you do have the opportunity to execute it on the school level and then kind of step back and being like, oh, that looks nice. And for me, one of my side projects has always been, if I want teachers to generate good ideas and good instructional practice, you have to give them the time to develop and to plan those things. And so internally, again, in the olden times, we came up with structures that afforded teachers those opportunity, whether it's getting substitutes to release them, opening the building on Saturdays, like giving them just the time to collaborate. I think what the district did well during remote learning was, the Tuesday, so Monday to Tuesday, a certain group or all the kids are there in person or remote, but then Wednesday's fully remote. But then they also adjusted that schedule on Wednesday. So the kids go on an adjusted time. So they're there for about 3 hours of synchronous learning, and then they're released for asynchronous or, independent learning. And that gave the teachers time to work together, collaborate, and just really think about, what am I presenting to students and what's the time I have to prepare that? And it's borne dividends, right? You see people just putting out richer stuff. Like I went to my 7th, 8th grade classroom and they were comparing, Chimamanda Adichie's TED Talk on a singular story to, a local spoken word artist and how she sort of, laid out her identity. And I was like, that would not normally have been possible if the teachers did not have time to work together. And somebody said, I know one resource. And another person said, I know another resource. Hey, why don't we get them to compare these two mediums? And I think, whatever, just like cooking, you got to give things time. You got to let things put a little zhuzh into it. So I think that aspect of the reopening plan, I would love to see stay, or something to that nature where they allow the school week to reflect what it truly takes to run good schools. Another piece I've also seen the district, really put its money where its mouth is in the rollout of the resources and the curriculum with the universal design curriculum. So allowing for teachers to have like banks where they can create assessments, places where they could get resources to instruct. That was something that was needed. That was both in the virtual and the in-person phase. So those were big things, because you can have all the ideas, but if you don't have the resources to actually execute it with students being in different modes, it's rather difficult.
Thank you for that. And if I can just chime in here with that question from our viewer. One of our listeners, Dr. Martha Watts, who is also in the field of education, her question is, the NEA and other educational research reports a decline in learning gains and have dubbed it the COVID slide. How has this impacted your students and how will you address it?
Absolutely. If there's one thing that's been top of mind, it's definitely that aspect of having a very fuzzy understanding of what students know and are able to do. That problem also is multidimensional, right? Because a school like Sayre, our kids, for the most part, come on a daily basis. So I can tell you that students have been exposed to rigorous instruction, right? Or the consistency, like every day that they come, they're learning something, or they're building their foundational skills. What is unclear is how that measures up, right? The intensity of the instruction. So without district-wide assessments, without normed assessments, we're unable to truly measure, is my first grader who attends Sayre doing as well as or better than other first graders in similar settings? And so the way we've tried to address this is to say, so even though we might not be able to put our students on a national continuum, we should still be able to tell if a child started at point A in September of 2020, where did they end up at point Z at the end of 2021 school year? And the limitations of that was that we just didn't have the manpower to do that school-wide. So we had to be very strategic about who and when we were paying attention to students. And for me, I was like, we absolutely have to pay attention to primary, no ifs, ands, or buts about it, right? Because beginning of their instruction at that point, and we want to make sure that as they matriculate, we're adding on, right? We're not repeating, that sort of thing. We have an opportunity with the district to be something called an opportunity school. And so that basically just says we get additional resources and also training based on our historical teacher retention levels. And so we have a coach. And so this coach works with our mostly kindergarten and second grade teachers, but we also fold in first grade in there. And she works with them on primary math. so that we can at least identify the qualitative side of their mathematical gains. We had to create our own internal assessments for the beginning of the year. We want to know, what is a child's foundational numeracy levels? What are their foundational literacy levels? And then we check again, intermittently throughout the school year. And we basically want to give the next teachers that receive them a set of information that says they started here and they have here to go, right? So that we can hit the ground running at that next grade level. And then obviously making sure that we provide programming and academic enrichment through the summer. We're still on that agrarian schedule. So we're to pull up on 3 months of silence and nothingness. So all the babies that we're worried about, we're like, don't you want to give them to me for 4 more weeks? I'm throwing in a slip and slide.
Yeah.
Who can say no to that?
Very interesting.
Food fights, come on.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you.
Absolutely.
While you were a principal at Walt Disney School, you worked with parents
Yes.
to strengthen the home school connection.
Yep.
And now that we're talking about, of course, unpredictability, we don't know what to expect, right, for the next year. Or no one's really confirming what
Forever.
Right. Right.
I hope not.
So I wonder, what advice do you have for parents? What strategies do you have for parents that maybe you were employing back then, or that maybe you learned now, that parents who are listening can make notes and do this, because we don't know when it's going to be, back to doing this at home exclusively, during the pandemic.
Honestly, the advice that I have is not profound and has been told twice over. And it's also a great tie-in because I worked closely with the Disney Parent Advisory Council. And what I would say is that, parents shouldn't undersell themselves in that they are the first teachers, right? And so even if they're in their living rooms, even if they're in their houses or they're going grocery shopping, there are learning opportunities everywhere, right? So first and foremost, parents model the type of learning. So if you're eating a bowl of cereal and you flip that box of cereal over to read what's on the back, the kids see that. They're just like, that is print and it is interesting and someone is reading it, right? So that's an example of modeling those behaviors. When you read the newspaper or you check out something on social media and you're just like, that's interesting. I think parents sometimes struggle with how to engage middle schoolers, like pull up that meme, pull up that, short article on Facebook. Argue the merits of that. Is there bias in there? But really finding those natural opportunities to mirror or promote this curiosity is really what's going to propel them to be hungry students when they get back into the classroom. So just making it just, in this house, we learn, whether it is formally, informally, we figure out stuff, right? Like, let's categorize all the fruit in the house. Let's categorize the fruit. My 5-year-old told me, most people think a tomato is a vegetable, but it's really a fruit. And I was like, interesting. What other things fit into that category? He's a precocious 5-year-old. But right, it's just sort of those things of giving credence to their natural curiosity and engaging them in those conversations. But conversations, especially with the little ones, are so key because the learning so far has, predominantly been passive, except when the teacher calls on you. So, worrying about that volley back and forth of conversation for the little ones is important.
Thanks for that reminder. Learning doesn't stop after school. I mean, it's happening the entire time. So
yep.
You're getting the language program and the STEM program. What are some other programs do you think? I'm sorry?
It's the International Baccalaureate Program.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes. Thank you.
Yep.
So what's another program that you feel like would really benefit your students' lives there?
I know. So as a previous middle school teacher, I think I'm always like, and middle school, and people are like, have any other grades? But there are actually quite a few other initiatives. The way that I sort of fashion, or the way it sort of organizes in my head, is schools within schools, right? The primary experience is different from the intermediate, and I call that 3rd through 4th, 5th-ish grade, and then the middle school experience. And in my 5 years as principal, right, ideas, they come, they go. And my sort of take on this was like, you want to give people almost like the benchmark or the flagship of this is the big feature for your child for this grade level. And so over the years, we've been able to apply for different grant opportunities and partner with different community organizations. So what it actually has settled down to that the teachers have really, grabbed onto, and it's something that we engage in multiple cycles of each year. Our primary teachers really got into art integration. So we have a partnership called Spark, where they get professional development and they work with different art teaching artists who are artists and also work with, teachers to develop lesson plans and units. And then they go to, other cohorts of teachers to learn how they do things. And there's like a performance piece that they can take kids to go watch. And so it's an example of how they can teach the content areas, but how they can infuse music, poetry, visual arts into that piece. And that was something that we were able to say, this is markedly something that you should see when you come to Sayre. And so each year we're able to improve what that looks like. So for example, there was a griot or an African storyteller that came and would like pop into each classroom, using Zoom, and the kids, it was very highly interactive, call and response. They learned some African songs and dances. And so it just showed a way of how they can use spoken word as a medium. And then they also created like butterfly mosaics from Colombia, for Hispanic Heritage Month. So just giving them opportunities, even though some of them are now physically with us, to continue to infuse the arts, in their primary years. A couple of years back, we're in our third year of this grant. Chance the Rapper, I swear if I ever see that young man, I will shake his vigorously. he gave us $100,000, towards computer science. And so that experience is usually felt in the intermediate years. There's just something about an 8 and 9-year-old understanding that like that amazing thing that normally just happens in my mind, that story that I tell about the shark and the starfish, I now have the opportunity to use Scratch and coding to make that a reality and show everybody else and tell my own story. And so what I love about these initiatives is that you get that student that hasn't quite figured out where his or her tribe is, right? I don't know what I'm about. I'm just sort of floating, and sometimes I'm here, sometimes I'm not, sometimes I get in trouble, sometimes I'm not. And then you give them this tool and suddenly they're the expert, right? The kids are coming up to their tables and being like, how did you do that, right? Google partnered with us. And so when you walk into our hallway, you see this giant mural that the kids worked on, and Google was just like, you can have it, we'll install it. And they're always in our, they're always, looking to partner and provide our teachers with different professional development opportunities. But it's this idea, again, that like we start with the arts and then you move towards computer integration. You bring those skills that you learned when you were doing art into your coding and your engineering and your prototyping. And then you are an IB, where it all sort of comes together in middle school, where now you have the art and the computer science. Now you're ideating, you're empathizing, you're thinking about problems and saying, what is my approach to solving them? What do I need to learn to do that? And who's my audience? And how do I communicate those ideas to them? So that's sort of the grand scheme of the Sayre experience. And each year we get stronger about what that looks like and what experiences the students have. And we take a moment to reflect and say, what do the students really respond well to or strongly to? And what's something that we could tweak and change? And catch us in like 2-3 years, blue ribbon all the way.
Fantastic. Yeah, I figured you had a vision a little bit larger, keep kind of seeing what the future is going to be. That's great. Well, and also it's been a really tough year for a lot of people, obviously for pretty much everybody. Where have you found joy so that you can continue to be an inspiration to other people?
Ooh. So a funny thing happened on the way to the market. When the pandemic, as an extrovert, I was like, oh, all my fun stuff is gone, right? That stay in your house. And so I think sometimes someone who is like highly energetic, kind of go, sometimes we neglect ourselves. Shocking, right? And as someone who is also just service oriented or other driven, I think the pandemic allowed me to be still, which is something that is new and foreign to me. One of the things that I took up was meditation. So Zoom culture actually worked for someone like me, right? It was like, wait, I get to be in my room and still people and try new things, and I don't have to get in the car. Right. So it was fantastic. Like I just started taking all of these like classes. I was like, okay, meditation, sure. Yoga, why not? Zumba, fell in love. Right. And so it was just that like, okay, things that I would tell myself, oh, I don't have time, or the kids or work. It's like you're in your living room, you could just do this. And so being able to sort of pour back into myself allowed me to rejuvenate and sort of just be able to weather the challenges of the pandemic, because I was taking time to breathe. I was taking time to be still. I was taking time to explore my own passions, because I think we are sometimes our best muses. And so if I see something or hear something or connect with another spirit or soul, I can take that now back to work and be like, I was talking to somebody about something. Can we try this? My staff hates it when I do that. They're like, oh God, she's been meditating, washing dishes again. God help us. That's where my best ideas come from, washing dishes.
Yeah.
Nice.
I hear you.
I've got one more question. And you were talking a little bit about, like, if it wasn't Sayre, then it would always be another school
Not
that wasn't Sayre, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
How would you describe the spirit of Sayre and how that spoke to you?
So I mentioned that I grew up, or like 4th through 8th grade, I went to school, small Catholic school in a small town. Literally a small town. There was like Main Street, and then not Main Street, and then you were not anywhere, right? but the remarkable thing was that like everybody knew everybody, and like there were these big events, right? There was like it was a farming town, so there was like ag days or agricultural days, and there was the big fair, and then there was like the fish fry, and then there was a smorgasbord where the moms would bake cakes, and you would do like competitions and win a cake or win a punch bowl. I don't know, and it was that idyllic setting, right? Or like you'd be at the Pizza Hut, you'd run into your teacher, or like the principal lived across the street, literally, and it was just that feeling of like I'm in this community, I'm in my tribe, right? And if I need something, or, I'm worried about something, it doesn't just have to be my mom or dad. Like my teacher might, notice that and talk to my mom, or like just that familiarity. And I feel that's what I felt at Sayre, right? So Galewood has that same sort of like walkable sidewalks, neighbors walking dogs saying hello. And then you happen upon, Newland Avenue, and there's this like majestic building that you see like in movies with this lawn. And I was like, what is this Mecca? Right. And I just remember like reading about it and looking at their different pictures. Like they had like the 8th graders graduating, and they were like all smiles and stuff like that. And I was just like, this is just such a cute little neighborhood with a cute little school. And then in the interview process, the way that they did it, so there were like 3 phases, and I swear I met everybody that worked there or had a child there. Like there were so many people in this interview process at each phase of it. Like little Mr. Rogers, I baked them cookies the first time. I was like, well, we're neighbors, so we're a bunch of cookies. And then you can ask me questions about what I've done professionally, right? But just the whole process, like you could feel that there was a community interest in, bringing somebody on to lead the school. And I needed that, right? I didn't want it to just be like, the LSC members were like, we pick you. It was truly the parents. I think students were there at some point. And so you could tell that everybody was interested in who I was and my story and what I was bringing. So that opportunity really led me to be like, this is a school that we could do stuff together, right? Because it's everyone at the big table. I'm a sucker for family.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
So we know you've had some time in school. Hopefully
Too much time, if you ask me.
What is your favorite restaurant? But what else are you looking forward to when the world reopens? And I mean really reopens entirely.
So, in moments of reflection, what this time has really taught me, right, is the importance of time and the choices that you make, right? Because you not going on that trip or not taking that vacation, you sort of take for granted that you can later, right? Like right now it's school, or right now it's family, or right now is work. I think when the world reopens, I'm going to take that trip. So I've been obsessed with the New Zealand culture, the Maoris, and pleasure. I just watch hakas, which is like the native, warrior dance and cry. And I get really emotional because it's so powerful, right? It's so emotional, and like all of them are doing it together, right? Kind of like that movie with the blue people where they're all hugging the tree. I want to see one in real life. Avatar? Yeah, that one. Yeah. Like that scene was super powerful for me. They were all making the tree come alive. And so that's what a haka reminds me of. And I was like, I'm gonna go to New Zealand and I'm gonna see a haka. So when the world reopens, I'm taking those trips.
Yes,
you deserve it.
Good. It's going to be a long trip, but I bet you everybody will want to see videos of
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely a beautiful expression of emotion. So
Yeah.
that's cool. That's a cool.
I know. If you haven't seen one, YouTube it. I cry every single time. I'm like, oh my God.
I saw him at a wedding recently, and it was really impressive. Just the expression. It was really beautiful.
So, what are you most grateful for?
Okay. I think what's most important for me is family, community in the immediate and extended sense of the words. I think when the world fell apart so quickly, and things that we took for granted were taken away from us, I think the one constant that was there for everyone was your family. I can still kind of taste the atmosphere of March. I can smell what the air feels like. My youngest, who was 1 at the time, he's obsessed with Singing in the Rain, the song, the musical. And we played that on repeat, like when the world first shut down. I mean, repeat. But it didn't matter, right? Because we were safe, they were safe, we were together. And it was like, who else would you want to weather this with other than your family? And I could say the same about my Sayre family, my Gilwood family, right? I feel blessed that I could still walk out of my house, right? I wasn't miles and miles away from the community that I serve. Like if I go to the grocery store, I'll see my people. I go take a walk, I'll see my people. And that was reassuring, right? Because I think the pandemic created this curtain, this distance between your community and whatever those terms are, but to be lucky enough to still be centered there and still, touch the lives and, see my own family, see my own sons. I think I could never be too grateful for having that.
It's beautiful. So for every one of these episodes, you take a moment, and you might have heard about my ripple moment. What is your ripple moment?
I think my ripple moment in this job, it can feel very big, right? It's a school. There are 436 kids, and all those 436 kids come with sets of parents and siblings and things like that. But I think the most powerful experiences for me are when I can help like one person do one thing or make something better. So that could be like my neighbor who's having a rough day and I get to give them a COVID bump, right? That might be me sitting virtually with a third grader or first grader and trying to figure out like what his teacher means by fact families. I think it's when I get opportunities to have those one-on-one connections that I truly feel like I'm living in my purpose. And I have helped in some way with the mountains of challenges that we're all faced each day. That one-on-one support, that's important. That's my ripple moment.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's 9 o'clock.
And who is that? Might I ask?
My Mac laptop on the hour every hour, and people think that it's a prompt, a very rude prompt. We just haven't figured out how to
Tame him.
It's just our little.
I need those in my meetings.
It's 9 o'clock. Reel it in.
I love it.
Prop, it's just something to make us laugh. So,
Yeah.
So Sade, today we have learned so much about you, all of the challenges that you were faced with, your school, teachers, students, families. I really am impressed with the resilience that you had to muster during this time. You really had to go into different lanes. I mean, they usually say stay in your lane. You went all over.
All through the lanes. It's in everything.
All of the lanes. And you were a professional, it sounds like, the entire time. And you seem to have enjoyed it almost, you were enthusiastic about it. You laughed a lot about as you were telling us about it. And that is something really unique, because I feel that educators were incredibly stressed and perhaps not as resilient as they would have wanted to be. So this has been a complete ripple moment for all of us to see someone like you and to tell your story and to tell the story of educators that you worked with and the communities, and to speak with so much love and enthusiasm. And so it's been a complete honor for us to listen to you today. And we thank you. Thank you so very much for telling us your story. Thank you.
Thank you.
And really found your journey very inspiring. And I imagine that you know a few inspiring people as well. And so we ask all of our guests, would you like to nominate somebody to come on to Ripple Moments? Someone who you think would inspire the people who are watching this show?
Absolutely.
And who would that be?
Oh, this is like the UFC where you call out the person you need to fight next. I love it.
So being tested.
Who do you hate?
We want names.
That's hilarious. Oh my goodness. All of my colleagues who have been doing this work in different, parts of Chicago, we all work for the same school district, but you would swear we worked for different countries, sometimes different planets. My colleague down the street at Lovett Elementary, the principal of Lovett, she has like a completely different experience, particularly with like the issue of teachers returning versus not returning, and most schools having most of their staff returning. Those are definitely stories to share, and just really thinking about, when you do have when you do lead predominantly Black and brown schools, that's a different experience, and that's a different story that I think does need to be told. So I would say reach out to Principal Kane from Lovett Elementary.
All right, we will.
Yeah,
definitely. Thank you.
He's going to be like, you did what?
Set him up.
Yep.
Folasade, I am just so honored that you were able to spend some time with us in conversation, very candid conversation, and we saw your heart for your community, for your students, and we're just so honored Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. This was a lot of fun.
Great, great. So we find ways as well to honor other people in our community, and our artists across the world pretty much has been impacted by the pandemic as well. So we have been honoring artists, and today that artist is Asha Rowland. We're going to honor her today. She's a multifaceted artist who focuses on several idioms of dance as well as other mediums. She's a member of Natya Dance Theater and has been training and specializing in classical Indian dance since she was the age of 8. She has performed internationally at renowned venues and is co-lead and executive board member of Loyola University's Afro Descent, and has helped grow the organization into a widely known and respected dance troupe within the university. Her multicultural heritage has exposed her to other idioms of dance, and her solo projects draw from her foundation and influences to bring to us a wide vocabulary of movement rooted in fluidity and harmony. For upcoming events and more information, you can visit asharowland.com, but Asha's piece today is ready to go, and we're ready to enjoy.
To a guest.
Thank you. Thank you. That was so in honor of you, Ms. Ade. Thank you for all that you do for our community and for our students.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. This was a tremendous opportunity.
Well, thank you again, Ms. Sade, and all of the educators who have been helping all of our children during this pandemic, whether it's been virtually or in school. So thank you again. And we want to make sure that you like and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn using the handle @Utopia Connect, or simply go to ripplemoments.org. We also invite you to join us again when we host another Ripple Moment. Thanks again for joining us, and see you next time.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.